Hi, welcome to part two. I had mentioned in the end of part one that we had found a company that was capable of manufacturing and distributing the product. But before that occurred, uh, my wife came down with breast cancer. And, we had a lot of ups and downs, but this was the really big downer. And it was very expensive. We had to cancel some life insurance policies that I had. We just couldn't make the payment on them. And she came down with a breast cancer that required her to have a double mastectomy, and it was an especially aggressive form of breast cancer. Uh, the doctors, they couldn't really tell us, exactly what the prognosis would be and she was roughly in about stage 3 with it. So again, we just said, you know what? We said we were going to trust God all the way, right to the end, no matter what, and that includes breast cancer. And I had just resigned myself that whatever happened in our lives, whatever happened, it didn't matter. We were going to trust God, and because I knew ultimately that was the safest thing for us to do. Job in the Bible went through hell. He lost everything he had. He lost his family. The only thing God left him with was a bitchy wife, and that's all. And she would say, "Hey, just curse God and die." And he said, "Shame on you, woman. I'm going to trust God. Even if he slays me, I'm going to trust him." So that's what he did, and everything ended up working out fine for him. But that's what we were going to do. We just decided that's what we're going to do, and we're going to continue to learn to trust him more and more. And he put plenty of pressure on us to have to do that. But we did learn, and our trust did grow. And ultimately, it was a really good education, frankly. And that's what he put us through. It was an eight-year process. Well, I'm not sure it's over yet, really, but anyway, so she, had it pretty rough early on. I mean, she had her double mastectomy. She had to take chemo. There was another drug she had to take, and slowly, she would feel better off and on. And she would even then, when she felt halfway decent, she would help me make salsa. Believe it or not. I mean, she was just incredible, absolutely incredible. I can't imagine that. I mean, women basically are generally a lot stronger than men anyway, but she sure proved it there. Now, I sold the company, and we had to sell the company. We just literally, we had weeks we didn't know if we were going to be able to buy groceries, literally. And so this company wanted to buy it, and we had to sell it, and so we did. And for enough money to sustain us for about a year, and then we would be tied into future royalties, assuming that they got the salsa placed with the grocery chain or chains, which has not yet happened. But I think it will eventually happen. Salsa is part and parcel of this story. So we were making salsa. I was on an on-call basis to drive over to Orlando at that time and help them make salsa when they needed it. And in the meantime, they allowed me to make it here and sell it just to some local customers that I had, and I did that for a period of time. Now, I'm going to get into how it is we named our ministry 16 Cents Ministries. This is when God really started showing how he was going to lead us and how he was going to communicate with us. So here's what happened. We had a next door neighbor that had a beautiful Victorian home. He sold the home and asked my wife if she would help with the estate sale, a glorified garage sale. And she said, sure. And so she was working on that. I don't know, probably took a couple weeks really, but one of the things that this owner had left over at the end was a big plastic bin full of empty three-ring binders. He was a lawyer, and he needed to get rid of them. He didn't want to take them to the fire station to put it in the proper dumpster because there was metal and that kind of thing in it. So I said, well, let's just put it alongside my house and maybe somebody will pick it up. Who knows? I don't know. And he said, oh, that sounds like a good idea. So he took out a dollar bill out of his pocket, and he had a little leather, like a change pouch. And he stuck the dollar bill in it, and he said, for good luck, I'm going to put this dollar in. And he had about that much of the dollar sticking out of the top of the change pouch. Then he said, I am also going to put some change in there for extra luck. And he threw the change in the change pouch. I drug it in front of my house. It was late afternoon, early evening. The night comes. We go to bed. I wake up at 3 in the morning, and I cannot go back to sleep. I just cannot go back to sleep. So I remembered that there was something that I had intended to buy at Walgreens drugstore earlier in the evening, and I forgot to do it. So I thought, well, I'll just go to the drugstore and buy what I wanted to get. I pulled into the parking lot, and as you can imagine, there were no cars in the parking lot, and there were no people in the parking lot. I mean, I didn't see a soul when I drove in there. I got out of my car, locked it, looked up, and right in front of me, under the overhang at Walgreens, was a young man, 30-ish, I'll say, pushing a bicycle. And it's very hard to explain, but he had, I'll call them kind eyes. His eyes kind of spoke to you. It's very difficult to explain. But he looked at me and he said, excuse me, sir, do you have 16 cents? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't have any change. And he looked at me again and he said, just 16 cents. Now, he didn't say it, I can't say it the way he did exactly, but he didn't say it like only 16 cents. What he was conveying to me with his tone and his eye contact and his demeanor was that 15 cents wasn't going to work and 17 cents wasn't going to work. The number was 16. And again, I said, well, I'm very sorry, but I don't have any change. Now, I did have it in the car, and I could have gotten it, but I didn't do it. He wasn't my priority. And my priority was going into the store and getting what I wanted to get. He looked at me like, after I said that, he looked at me like, I'm not asking you for me. I'm asking you for you. And that's what his eyes were conveying to me. It wasn't for him, it was for me he was asking. And it just really confused me. And so anyway, I walked into the store, and when I walked into the store, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I just felt so guilty for not helping this man, especially when I had previously, when I trusted God that day, said one of these days I'd like to be able to make enough to help other people. And here I don't give him 16 cents. So I thought, well, when I come out, I'm going to give him some money. And I was not in there very long. I came out, he was gone. I couldn't find him. I walked around the building. I even drove around 2 or 3 blocks looking for him. I couldn't find him. And somehow I felt that this was of God, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. I just felt that somehow God was involved in this. So anyway, I went home thinking, wow, what a strange occurrence to happen, at 3 o'clock in the morning. Go to bed, wake up the next day. I leave for the day, come back that evening. I'm making dinner for ourselves and our neighbors. They didn't have anything left, in their home. They couldn't cook or anything. So I was cooking dinner, and I forgot to look and see if anybody had taken that bin. So we were sitting around the dinner table. I asked the former owner, I said, Don, did anybody take that bin? I didn't notice when I came home. And he said, no. He said, nobody took the bin. But somebody did take the dollar bill. But they left the 16 cents. And I said, are you sure that was 16 cents? He said, yeah, it was a nickel, a dime, and a penny. And I thought, oh man, how can that be? I mean, you meet somebody at 3 in the morning. I mean, why is he even there, really? And then ask me for 16 cents. And then the next day, there's 16 cents in this pouch that he had put in the pouch, but nobody had taken. And, it's kind of interesting that I didn't give it to this man. And then, he says, well, nobody took it. Well, that kind of makes sense. So it just puzzled me. It really puzzled me for at least a week, I guess. And finally, I thought, it just occurred to me that there are numbers that are meaningful in the Bible. I had never heard that 16 meant anything in the Bible at all, but I thought, well, I'll Google it and see, if it means anything. I did. Boom, it comes up. The number 16, the number for love in the Bible. And it led me to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And that's for those of you who might be familiar with it or not familiar with it, that's a chapter where the Apostle Paul is teaching on love. Love is patient, love is kind, love is, what's the word? Anyway, the 16 characteristics of love. And I'm thinking, wow, that's had to be what that is. That had to be what that is. Now, I was already somewhat familiar, with that chapter. I didn't memorize it, obviously, but I was familiar with it. And I couldn't get my arms around it. I thought, okay, well, good. I mean, God maybe is showing me this. And I'm convinced that this person is an angel, by the way, just for a lot of reasons. And but I couldn't get my arms around it. I thought, okay, he showed this to me, but what am I supposed to do with it? I mean, I try to love people. I do. I struggle with that, frankly. Not as much now as I did, but I struggle with it. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. And I struggled with that for eight months, I'll say. And finally, I asked God a question. Again, early in the morning, about 3 o'clock in my office. I'll tell you in a minute.